I don't want her in the pictures, my mother hissed, thinking I couldn't hear from the hallway. She'll ruin the vibe, my sister Chelsea added with a laugh. She can stay in the kitchen, or better yet, stay out of sight altogether. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I stood frozen, barefoot on the cold tiles, holding the platter of fruit I just finished arranging for their precious 30th wedding anniversary. My hands trembled slightly, not from the weight, but from the sting. I wasn't invited. I was staff in my own childhood home. They didn't know I was there yet. Too busy adjusting centerpieces and making sure the caterer spelled our last name right. Too busy pretending we were still some picture-perfect family. Too busy brushing me off like a stain on their polished reputation. I slid the tray onto the counter, turned on my heel, and walked out the back door without a sound. That night, I booked a vacation to Key West, first class, ocean view suite, all-inclusive. Paid with the money they didn't know I had. I didn't leave a note, just turned off my phone. Day one of the party, I posted a photo, me in a white silk wrap dress, standing on a yacht, glass of wine in hand. The caption, "Stay out of sight? Sure, I'll stay out of the country." It took exactly 17 minutes before my cousin Andrea messaged me. "OMG, are you really not coming? Your mom's freaking out." I sipped the wine, tapped back. Didn't get the invite, remember? By nightfall, my inbox was chaos. "Lena, you're being immature. Just come back. We'll make room." Dad had a meltdown in front of everyone. Chelsea spilled wine all over the cake. Aunt Vicky screamed at the caterer. Uncle Ray left with half the guests. I read each one while lying in a hammock, the ocean breeze brushing against my bare shoulders. I smiled. They were unraveling without me. By the time day two came around, they'd gone full crisis mode. The anniversary was supposed to span a whole weekend, a magazine-worthy affair. But the power went out during the slideshow. The band never showed. The planner quit mid-event. And my mom? She slipped in the driveway in front of the photographers. But the best message came from my father. "Please, just come home. Your mother's crying." We shouldn't have said that. We were wrong. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The man who once told me, "You're just a background character, Lena. Be grateful we feed you," was now begging me to come home. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted another picture, this time lounging by the infinity pool, captioned, "It's peaceful when no one tells you to dim your light." I watched the views climb, the comments pour in. People I hadn't spoken to in years were texting me, suddenly remembering my name. It took them less than 48 hours to go from "stay out of sight" to "please come back." And I hadn't even revealed the real part yet, because the next morning, I had a meeting with the buyer of my parents' house. They thought I was weak, that I'd just take it, smile politely, fade into the background like always. But the truth? They had no idea who I'd become while they were too busy favoring Chelsea and chasing cocktail party clout. While they laughed behind my back, I was building something quietly. I'd worked 2 jobs, taught myself investing, and stayed focused. Every "you'll never make it" was fuel. And now I had enough power to flip their perfect little world upside down. And I was going to do it in heels. The morning after their party collapsed, I stood at the gates of the very house I grew up in, the house they told me I didn't belong in anymore. A Range Rover waited at the curb, the lawyer beside me scrolling through the final paperwork. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. I looked up at the windows, same curtains, same doorbell chime, same front steps I sat on when my dad grounded me for asking to go to art school. "I've never been more sure." He handed me the pen. I signed. See, what they didn't know was that while they were planning their big event, they were also quietly trying to sell the house. The taxes were bleeding them dry. The bank was threatening foreclosure. But to keep their image perfect, they told no one. Just listed it under a shell name, hoping for a fast buyer, fast cash. They didn't expect the buyer to be me. They didn't expect me to have the cash in hand. And they definitely didn't expect me to close the deal the day after their failed anniversary party. By 2 p.m., the house was legally mine. By 2:30, movers were rolling up. I didn't knock. I walked right in. My mother stood in the living room, disheveled, sipping cold coffee in the same dress from last night. Her heels were off. Her mascara was smudged. The chaos from the ruined party still lingered. Tipped over chairs, wine-stained tablecloths, deflated balloons sagging like the mood. She turned, startled. Lena? What are you doing here? I dropped the keys on the table. She blinked. Where did you get those? Before I could answer, Dad stormed in from the kitchen, already fuming. You've got some nerve showing up here after the stunt you pulled online. That vacation post? Real mature. I smiled softly. It was, and I needed the rest. I was working late nights trying to process a real estate deal. Mom scoffed. We're not in the mood for your passive-aggressive digs, Lena. Good, I said, because this isn't passive. It's very, very direct. I pulled the folder from my tote bag and placed it gently on the table. Dad frowned, flipping it open. Then his face paled. What is this? Chelsea entered next, on her phone, and froze when she saw me. Oh, wow, look who finally decided to show her face. I never left, I said. I just elevated. She rolled her eyes. Please, you're still the girl who lived in the basement and folded towels like a maid. Dad was still staring at the folder. This is a property deed for this address. Why is your name on it? Because, I said slowly, savoring the moment, I bought it. They all blinked. Chelsea laughed like it was a joke. You bought this house. With what? Your Etsy shop? I turned to her. With my shares in a logistics tech startup. The same one you mocked me for joining 3 years ago? I was employee number 5. She stopped laughing. My mother stepped forward, voice trembling now. You're lying. This house was listed privately. No one even knew. You listed through Hawthorne Realty under an alias LLC to keep it quiet from the neighborhood. I know. I made an offer anonymously. Full price. In cash. Yesterday. Silence. Dead. Heavy. Thick. Dad's face went red. You can't do this. This is our house. Not anymore. I could see it in their eyes. The panic. Because this wasn't just about a house. This was their last piece of control. Their stage. Their reputation. Gone. Chelsea stepped toward me now, her voice pitched high. Okay, so what now? You kick us out? Just to prove some petty point? I stared at her, calm and still. I don't have to kick you out. The paperwork already gave you a 48-hour window to vacate. It was part of the terms. Mom gasped. You're actually doing this? You told me to stay out of sight, I whispered. So I did. I disappeared. I grew. I built something. And now I'm just taking back what you never valued. The lawyer entered then with a clipboard. Final walkthrough completed. Movers are ready to start when you give the word. I turned to him and nodded. My mother dropped her coffee. I walked upstairs into my old room. The posters were gone. The walls were painted beige, like they'd tried to erase me, pretend I'd never belonged. I sat on the edge of the bed. It was the same bed I cried myself to sleep in when they forgot my 16th birthday. The same bed I wrote my first business plan on. And now? It was mine again. But this time, I didn't feel small. Downstairs, I heard Chelsea shouting. Dad was calling someone. Mom was crying into the phone. But I didn't flinch. Because I wasn't the background anymore. I was the headline. And they were finally starting to read the story I'd written in silence. Please! My mother's voice cracked as I stepped back into the living room. We made mistakes, okay? But this is cruel, Lena. Cruel. That word clanged in my chest like a dropped knife. Cruel was watching. Me clear dishes at every birthday party like a server. Cruel was pretending I didn't exist when guests came over. Cruel was telling me to stay out of sight at their anniversary because I wasn't presentable enough for their curated life. Now that the power dynamic had shifted, they suddenly cared about kindness? I took a breath. No, Mom, I said softly. This isn't cruel. This is closure. Chelsea paced furiously across the marble floor, her designer heels clacking with every angry step. She's bluffing, she hissed at Dad. She doesn't have the guts to go through with this. She's always been soft. Dad shook his head, flipping through the signed paperwork again. This is real. I saw the notary stamp. Chelsea turned to me, scoffing. Okay, so what's your plan, Lena? Gloat for a few days, then hand it back out of guilt? Or maybe you're hoping we'll crawl to you for mercy? I didn't answer her, because I knew she couldn't handle silence. You're a disgrace, she spit. Buying your own parents' house out from under them? Who does that? I met her stare, steady. Someone who was never treated like family. Dad's fists clenched. We gave you everything. A roof, food. We raised you. You raised me in shadows, I shot back. In that basement room while Chelsea got the queen-size suite with the lake view, you raised me to be quiet, to serve. And when I stopped doing that, you called me ungrateful. Mom's voice was trembling now. Lena, we didn't know how to handle you. You were always different. There it was. The word they always used when they wanted to make me feel like I didn't belong. Different. Not gifted, not independent, not ambitious, just inconvenient. I turned to the lawyer standing patiently by the doorway. Start the inventory process. I want a record of everything they take when they leave. Chelsea gasped. You're seriously kicking us out? Just like that? You had a week to move, I said. It's already been 4 days since the deal closed. I'm being generous. She looked at Dad. Do something. He glared at me, but I saw the truth behind his eyes. He couldn't stop it. Not legally, not financially. They'd spent years acting like I was nothing. But I'd built everything while they laughed at me. And now, they had nowhere to go. The movers arrived by 3 p.m. Neutral uniforms, efficient, silent. One of them, a young man with sandy hair, paused in the foyer, glancing between the boxes and the stunned silence in the room. Where should we start? I nodded toward the formal dining room. That table, they said it was antique. Let's see if it fits in the back of the truck. Chelsea flinched like I'd slapped her. That's my table, she snapped. It was Mom's wedding gift. The mover looked at me. I shrugged. Belongs to the house now. Deed doesn't mention exceptions. Dad muttered under his breath. Unbelievable. I went outside for air. The sun was starting to set, casting long orange streaks over the front lawn. For years, I'd watched Chelsea throw garden parties out here, laughing with friends, never once inviting me to join. I was always the girl clearing glasses, told to wear something neutral so I wouldn't stand out. Now, I owned every blade of grass beneath my feet. Andrea, my cousin, pulled up in her Prius, eyes wide. I had to see if it was true, she said, stepping out in a rush. You really bought the house, I nodded. Her face lit up. Lena, that's insane. They're losing their minds inside. I raised an eyebrow. You don't think I went too far? She grinned. Not even close. You gave them a taste of what it's like to be invisible. Then, more gently, she added, honestly, I'm proud of you. We stood there for a moment, watching the chaos unfold through the window. Chelsea was shouting into her phone. Dad was trying to bribe one of the movers. Mom just sat on the couch, head in her hands. I used to dream about this, I admitted. Coming back, being someone. You are someone, Andrea said. And now? They finally have to see it. By 5 p.m., most of the furniture was packed. Chelsea tried one last time. Lena, listen. We were wrong, okay? You're not useless. I said some terrible things, but we're family. Family, I repeated quietly. She nodded. I tilted my head. Funny how you remember that word when you need something. Dad stood up. We'll leave. But you'll regret this one day. I walked to the door and opened it wide. Then I'll look forward to the day you prove me wrong. They walked past me slowly, heads low, like the royalty that had just been dethroned. The last thing out the door was a mirror, one that used to hang in the hallway. I caught a glimpse of myself in it as the movers carried it past. Same eyes, same frame. But not the same girl. Not anymore. Later that night, the house was quiet, empty. Mine. I sat at the kitchen counter, the one I'd once scrubbed spotless while Mom bragged about Chelsea's new degree. Now I sip my tea in peace. And when I heard my phone buzz again, it wasn't a begging message. It was a notification. The post I made, of me holding the deed, standing on the front steps, had gone viral. Thousands of people were cheering, because somewhere they'd been the Lena in their story. 2 weeks passed. The house was different now. Lighter. No more heavy footsteps. No more whispers behind closed doors. No more, why can't you be more like your sister, ringing through the walls like a haunting chorus. I redecorated slowly, room by room, not to erase the memories, but to reclaim them. The beige walls, painted soft teal, the stiff, perfect couches, gone, replaced with warm, lived-in comfort. The dining room that was once off-limits to me now hosted friends who actually laughed with me, not at me. For the first time, it felt like home. But then came the letter. Certified mail, gold trim on the envelope, Chelsea's handwriting on the back. I opened it carefully, expecting threats or some legal bluff. Instead, it was an invitation. Please join us for a family reconciliation dinner, hosted at Andrea's house, 6 p.m. sharp. I stared at the words for a long time. It wasn't guilt that made me consider going. It was curiosity. Did they really want to apologize? Or were they just scared of how far I'd risen? I wore a deep green dress. Nothing flashy, just elegant, confident. My hair was tied in a sleek, low ponytail, subtle earrings, no makeup tricks, just me. When I stepped into Andrea's home, every head turned. The room fell quiet, and that's when I knew they weren't expecting this version of me. Chelsea was the first to speak. You look different. Success will do that to you, I said, taking a seat at the head of the table. Andrea had saved it for me. Dad cleared his throat. Lena, we all made mistakes. We know that. Do you? I asked. Or do you just hate that I didn't stay small like you expected? He blinked. Mom looked away. Chelsea tried to smile. We just want to move forward as a family. Let's forget the past, yeah? I leaned forward, calm, controlled. You mean forget the part where you called me a maid at your bridal shower? Or where Mom told me to hide during her anniversary party? Their faces paled. Andrea, bless her, didn't interrupt. She just watched, proud, like this was long overdue. I am not angry anymore, I continued. Anger got me here. But now, I'm just done letting people rewrite the story when they only read the parts they like. Chelsea folded her arms. So what, Lena? You're just cutting everyone off? No, I said. I'm setting boundaries. And if that means some people can't cross them, that's on them. Mom's voice cracked. I still can't believe you bought the house. That was my choice, I finished. And the smartest decision I ever made. Then Dad said something I didn't expect. I'm proud of you. Everyone looked at him, even Chelsea. He continued slowly. I don't like how it happened. I don't like being out of control. But you did what none of us expected. You stood up. You made it on your own. And that deserves respect. For a second, I saw something in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe understanding, maybe both. Dinner was tense but quiet after that. They didn't get the reaction they hoped for, but they got the one they needed. I didn't explode. I didn't gloat. I just stayed composed and in control. When I left, Andrea walked me to the door. You're the storm they never saw coming, she whispered. I smiled. I was always the quiet one. They just thought that meant I was weak. The next morning, I got a message from a girl I didn't know. I saw your story on TikTok, the one where you bought your parents' house. You have no idea how much that meant to me. Thank you for showing women like us that we can reclaim what they tried to take. There were hundreds of messages like that. Strangers, survivors, daughters, people who had been the black sheep, the punchline, the outcast, people who were told to shrink. And now they were learning to stand tall. Because I had. Weeks later, I hosted my own dinner. Not a party, not for status, just a simple gathering of people who saw me. Andrea, my old college roommate, the startup founder I worked with, my assistant, a couple of neighbors who'd offered a hand when I moved in. We sat around the reclaimed oak table. Yes, that table. We laughed, we shared stories, we passed wine and dessert and joy. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need their approval anymore because I'd finally approved of myself. The phone rang later that night. Chelsea again. I didn't answer, not out of spite, but because I no longer needed to explain my worth to people who never bothered to see it. I stood by the window, the lights of the neighborhood twinkling beyond the garden. Same view, different woman. The girl they told to stay out of sight? She didn't just come back. She came back owning the place. You're just here to clean, right? The voice was loud, sharp, cutting through the music like a razor. I froze mid-step, a tray of untouched champagne glasses in my hands. Dozens of heads turned toward me, all dressed in expensive tuxedos and glittering gowns under the golden chandelier. My brother, Aiden, smirked from the center of the ballroom, raising his glass. Everyone, meet my sister Harper. She's the one keeping our floors shiny tonight. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Laughter erupted. Tight, fake, forced. The kind that stings more than it entertains. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the silver tray. The weight of humiliation pressed against my chest, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. I set the tray down on the nearest table, slowly straightened my posture, and reached into my coat pocket. A click, a smooth flip of leather. My badge caught the light. Actually, I said, my voice sharp, unwavering, I'm Detective Harper Blake. I'm here for something else tonight. Silence fell like a blade. The laughter died in their throats. I watched Aiden's glass tremble in his hand. He blinked. Once, twice. Someone gasped. You're lying, he said. This is some joke. I took a step forward, my boots clicking on the marble, steady and cold. Is it? Then why did Internal Affairs send me to investigate the Bennett Foundation's missing funds? You know, the $2.6 million no one seems to remember disappearing? Aiden's face drained of color. I told them I could blend in, I added, eyes locked on his. And you made that easy. My mother, arms draped in pearls, took a shaky step forward. Harper, you never said anything about being... Because you all made sure I was invisible. The failure, right? The one who couldn't finish law school because she was too busy cleaning up Dad's messes after he died. Whispers rippled through the crowd now. Party guests shifted uncomfortably, champagne forgotten. Some were already backing toward the doors. I scanned the room, eyes landing on the older man by the balcony. Senator James Carrington. He stood still, a napkin in hand, sweat forming at his temples. He was the real reason I was here, and he knew it. But tonight, I wasn't just exposing the money laundering operation my brother was neck-deep in. I was going to dismantle every single person who stepped on me to climb higher. One lie at a time. And the first one? That I was ever just the maid. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The senator's gaze locked with mine like he knew this moment would come. But the one who cracked first wasn't him. It was Aiden. He laughed. Loud. Desperate. Okay, he said, waving his hand like I was some joke that had overstayed its welcome. She's pulling some stunt. Harper, you made your point. Can we please go back to... I'm not finished, I said, cutting through his performance like a blade. I've been building this case for 14 months. Watching, recording, following paper trails your overpriced lawyers didn't even think to shred. You're crazy, he snapped, that cool older brother mask slipping. You're doing this now? In front of everyone? Yes, I said, stepping closer. Because you don't get to humiliate me anymore. Not after what you did to Mom's trust fund. Not after what you did to me. His lips parted. I kept going. You told them I dropped out. That I couldn't handle the pressure. But you left out the part where you stole my tuition money. You left out the part where you forged Mom's signature to drain her investment accounts and left her with nothing but fake stocks. You have no proof, he said quickly, his voice rising. Wrong, I said, and reached into my jacket again. This time, I pulled out a slim flash drive. You were sloppy. Your emails, the hidden bank transfers, the alias accounts. Arden Blake 79 wasn't very original. A burst of whispers exploded behind us. One woman clutched her pearls. A man holding a champagne glass slowly lowered it, trying to fade into the crowd. I tried to tell Mom, I said, voice trembling now, but not from fear. But she wouldn't hear it. Because you, Aiden, golden boy, clean suit, perfect smile, you were always her favorite. And I was just the girl who messed things up. He stepped forward, pointing a finger in my face. You came here to destroy this family. I stared at that finger for a beat, then slowly looked past it, to the senator. That depends, I said quietly, on how much more this family has left to destroy. Carrington shifted. The air around him thickened. I turned to him fully. Senator, I said clearly, you know who I am. You saw the badge. You know I've been working this case with the FBI. The crowd gasped. I thought you'd do the smart thing and keep your distance. But when I saw your name on the donation receipts connected to Aiden's shell company, I realized something. This wasn't just bad judgment, it was collusion. You fed him government contracts he was never qualified for, and he funneled kickbacks through Bennett Foundation's fake outreach programs. The senator's lips thinned, but he didn't speak. I have it all, I said. Dates, signatures, offshore accounts. Tonight, all of it gets submitted. I already have 2 agents outside. They're just waiting on my call. Now, the silence wasn't just stunned, it was frightened. You won't walk out of this room, the senator finally said, voice cold. Aiden's eyes went wide. That wasn't a denial. I smirked. Is that a threat, Senator? Because my body cam's been rolling since the moment I walked in. His jaw clenched. People started reaching for their phones now. Some recording, others dialing in hushed panic. This isn't how we handle things in this circle, he muttered under his breath, barely audible. I took one final step forward. That's the problem. You think you're in a circle no one can touch. But guess what? I used to be on the outside looking in, and I made it my mission to rip it open. A man in a gray suit turned toward the exit, only to be stopped by 2 plainclothes agents. Gasps followed. Panic spread like wildfire. A woman dropped her clutch. A younger man, probably another insider, looked like he was going to be sick. And Aiden? He just stared at me. Like he didn't recognize his little sister anymore. And maybe he didn't, because the girl who cleaned up after everyone's messes was gone. Now I made the messes, but only for people who deserved them. The ballroom doors creaked open again, and this time they walked in. 2 federal agents, no nonsense. Suits, earpieces, sharp eyes. One held a folder, the other nodded at me. Detective Blake, the lead one said, loud and clear. Ready when you are. I exhaled, slow and calm. I nodded toward the senator. Start with him. Wait, what? He barked, backing up. No one leaves, the agent said, raising his hand to block the senator. We're collecting statements tonight. And just like that, the party turned into a crime scene. People scattered. Photographers dropped cameras. Guests moved like ants under a magnifying glass, searching for exits that didn't exist. And me? I walked toward my brother one last time. You humiliated me, I said, mocked me, sabotaged me, and when I needed help, you told me to clean up my own mess. He said nothing, just stood there, his whole life crumbling around him in real time. I did, I said quietly, and now I'm cleaning up yours. And with that, I turned and walked away. This time, with my head high. This time, everyone watched me. And not because I was the maid, but because I just turned their entire world upside down. I didn't look back. The ballroom behind me descended into chaos. Heels clacked in panic. Whispers turned to shouted arguments, and security tried to keep the press at bay. But I kept walking through the gold-plated hallways like I owned the place. Because tonight, I did. Harper, one of the agents called, falling into step beside me. FBI has already started seizing assets. Offshore transfers are frozen. We just needed someone on the inside. I nodded. That's why I stayed quiet so long. Every step they took deeper into this mess made their fall louder. He gave me a look. You sure you're okay? I glanced down at my badge, still clipped to my belt. Still real. Still mine. I'm more than okay, I said. I've been waiting for this moment since the day my mother said, maybe you should leave the law to your brother. And that day played back in my mind like an old VHS tape I never threw out. It was the night after our father died. I was 19. My scholarship had just fallen through, and I found out Aiden had borrowed from our joint savings to throw himself a celebration dinner at a 5-star hotel. I confronted him. He laughed. My mom sided with him. You were never meant for pressure, Harper, she said, sipping wine like she didn't just throw away her daughter's future. Not everyone's a star. Number. Not everyone is. Some of us are storms. The next morning, the fallout began. Headlines exploded across news outlets like wildfire. Senator Carrington under federal investigation and kickback scheme. The Blake Foundation linked to multi-million-dollar fraud. Party turns into FBI raid. Guests interrogated on scene. I stood by the window of my apartment, sipping bitter black coffee, watching the sunrise cut across the skyline like a blade through darkness. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You embarrassed this family. I didn't need to ask who it was. My mother never saved her number in my phone. She didn't need to. Her tone was always enough. I replied, You mean the family that threw me away? She responded instantly. You think this makes you powerful? It makes you pathetic. Destroying your brother's life just because you couldn't compete. I stared at the message for a long moment, and then deleted it. By noon, Aiden had been arrested. The footage went viral, him being led out of his luxury penthouse in cuffs, face hollow, eyes wide. He didn't even look at the cameras, just kept asking, "Where's Harper? Where's my sister?" I watched the video on loop, expression unreadable. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was him. Detective Kyle Hensley, my former training officer, now my lead in the precinct. "You pulled off the entire thing alone?" I replied with a smirk. "Not alone. I had your annoying voice in my head every step of the way." He called me 5 seconds later. "I saw the press conference," he said without greeting. "You destroyed them, Blake." "They destroyed themselves," I said calmly. "I just pulled the curtain back." He was quiet for a moment. "Does it feel like justice?" he finally asked. I stared at the blank TV screen in front of me, my reflection fractured across the black glass. "No," I admitted, "but it feels like truth. And that's more than I ever got from them." Later that night, I got another message, this time from someone I never expected. Bennett, Rachel, my cousin. I didn't know Harper. About what Aiden did, I believed everything he said. "I'm sorry." I sat with the message, read it 5 times, thought about how she once whispered behind my back that I'd probably end up doing hotel laundry for a living. But at least she messaged. I responded, "Thanks. I didn't expect you to say anything. If there's anything I can do, anything, just ask." I paused. "Just tell the truth. When the trial starts, that's enough." She replied within seconds. "I will." The next morning, I walked into the precinct, not as a janitor, not as a temp, but as Detective Harper Blake, badge clipped, case jacket in hand, and eyes locked forward. Kyle met me at the elevator. "You know what's coming, right?" he asked. "Retaliation?" He nodded. "The Carringtons, the Bennetts, the donors. People like that don't go down quietly." "Let them try," I said. "You're not afraid?" I smirked. I was afraid, for years, of not being good enough, of always being the family disappointment, of failing. I stepped out of the elevator. But the funny thing about hitting rock bottom is, you learn to build a fortress there, brick by brick. He watched me walk into the main bullpen where the other detectives stood, reading the headlines, whispering to each other. I took my seat, opened my folder, and started the next case. Because while the world was still shocked by the detective who ruined her own brother, I had already moved on. There were more shadows to expose, more power to challenge, more truths to tear out from behind expensive suits and champagne smiles, and I wouldn't stop until every last one of them was dragged into the light. They thought I'd disappear after the courtroom fireworks. They thought Harper Blake would take her final bow, and the headlines would fade. But justice doesn't die when the cameras stop flashing. It sharpens. The courthouse steps were packed that morning. Cameras, journalists, suits with microphones. I didn't stop for them. I kept walking with the folder in my hand. Inside was the final affidavit, the one that would flip the entire Bennett-Carrington ring on its head. Behind me, echoes of gasps, questions, and flashes. In front of me, power. And I wasn't scared of it anymore. Aiden was already inside the courtroom, his expression vacant, his suit no longer crisp. He didn't wear the smug grin anymore. That died the day the agents walked into his penthouse and froze his accounts. He glanced at me once when I entered, then quickly looked away. Good. Senator Carrington sat beside his lawyer, whispering urgently. He looked older now, smaller, as if all that political confidence had been built on a foundation of lies, and I'd finally cracked the concrete. The judge took the bench. "Ms. Blake, you submitted a final affidavit this morning?" "Yes, Your Honor." He nodded. "Proceed." I walked forward and handed over the document. "Your Honor, this is a sworn statement from Rachel Bennett, a first-hand witness to multiple fraudulent transactions. She details how the Bennett Foundation operated as a front for laundering federal funds and how pressure was applied to family members to lie or stay silent." The courtroom broke into murmurs. Carrington's lawyer jumped up. "This is hearsay." "No, it's not," I said flatly. "It's notarized, cross-referenced with existing financials, and verified against digital evidence recovered by federal agents. The statement includes names, dates, and access logs." The judge flipped through it, expression tight. Then he looked up and turned toward the senator. "Senator Carrington, you are now under direct scrutiny for obstruction." conspiracy to defraud the government, and political misconduct. You are to remain in the state pending trial. Carrington stood. This is outrageous. She's fabricating this entire circus. I took a step forward, then explained the 11 wire transfers from Aiden Blake's business account to the senator's private foundation. Same timestamps, same offshore routing numbers. Would you like me to list the banks? The judge slammed the gavel once. Enough. This court has seen sufficient cause to proceed with the criminal investigation. Aiden closed his eyes. His entire world just collapsed. In real time. And my mother? She wasn't even in the courtroom. She hadn't shown her face once since I dropped the badge in front of her golden son. But the message she'd sent was still burned into my mind. You humiliated your brother in front of everyone. Was that worth it to you? Yes. Yes, it was. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every quiet girl who got laughed out of the room. Every woman they told to stay in her lane. Every truth swept under a rug that someone like me was always expected to clean. After the hearing, Kyle caught up to me on the courthouse steps. "You're not slowing down, are you?" he asked, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. "No," I said, eyes locked on the press vans and black SUVs parked across the street. "This is just the beginning." "You made a lot of enemies in that room," I smirked. "Then they'll know how I felt growing up." He leaned against the railing. "So what now?" "I finished what I started," I said. "I don't just want justice for myself. I want to dismantle the entire culture that let people like Aiden thrive. The fake charities, the rigged contracts, the silence, all of it." He studied me for a second. "You ever think about what this cost you?" I nodded. "Every day. And I'd do it again." Because the truth is, I didn't just lose my family. I exposed what they were. People like Aiden and Carrington used family like armor, something to hide behind when it was convenient. But when it cracked, they turned on each other faster than the truth could reach the surface. And now, they were drowning in it. A week later, the trials began. I sat in the back of the courtroom that time, not because I wasn't involved, but because my presence made them sweat more from the shadows. They avoided my eyes. Good. The prosecutors laid out the evidence in layers: emails, account transfers, digital trails that led straight to private jets, luxury properties, and fake nonprofit initiatives. And each time the screen displayed a signature, my name glowed just below it. Detective Harper Blake, primary investigator. I didn't flinch once. By the end of the second day, Carrington's legal team requested a private deal. He offered names, connections, even details on judges who were paid to delay cases. The corruption web ran so deep, the feds launched a separate task force. And I was recruited to lead it. It didn't come with glory. There was no grand parade, no warm reunion with my mother, no apology from Aiden. But I didn't need one, because the girl who once wiped wine stains off a marble floor had walked into a ballroom with a badge and turned a legacy into ash. I made them see me. I made them remember me, not with kindness, with consequence. Late one night, I stood at the old family home. The estate had been seized, its lights off, garden overgrown, gate rusting from years of pretending it held something noble. I looked at the brass plate on the gate that still read, "The Blake Residence," and I said under my breath, "Not anymore." Then I turned away. No badge, no headlines, just me. But this time, that was enough. Because I wasn't the maid. I wasn't the outsider. I wasn't the family shame. I was the reckoning. And reckoning always leaves a door open for justice.